What's up, fantasy managers? My name's Tom, and I'm back talking about F1 fantasy. Welcome to my team selection for the Bahrain Grand Prix, where we'll first of all reflect upon kind of what's going on so far in the season. We've only had 3 races, but I think we can already see stuff happening. There's certain strategies that are coming out and templates forming. So we'll have a look at all those things, and then I'll be talking about my actual team selection, obviously, as well. And how all those different things affect my team selection. We've got our first night race of the season in Bahrain here. We've got the race starting at 6 p.m. local time. Finally, I don't have to get up at stupid o'clock. The first 3 races have been hard work getting up for me. I mean, I know I'm very entitled and ungrateful because the majority of the races are a great time for me in the UK. But yeah, it's nice to have a sensible time for me. So apologies to anyone that is on the other side of the world and suffers. But there we go. So let's talk headline thoughts before we go any further. First thing, straight off the top of my head, is that there's quite clearly, I would say, a template forming. There's already, I guess, in a way, been a template, because the first race of the season, it was like, I'd say there's probably 3 different teams. There's the 3 different teams that I picked. You either kind of went with the Mercedes Ferrari with Piastri build, which didn't work out too well for most of us, or you went for the McLaren Mercedes Piastri build, which my team 2 did and is doing particularly well at the moment, or you did the like Piastri Norris with McLaren and Williams build. Those are kind of the 3 templatey things. It wasn't, you can't really call them templates, 3 different things. Template, you can't really have 3 templates. Well, you can, but you know what I mean. So the fact that now all those teams are kind of converging now on this, people are looking to get Piastri, McLaren, Mercedes in if you haven't already got them, because the Ferraris were disqualified in China, and so everyone's kind of jumped off the Ferrari train for at least a couple of weeks, as well as them not having a great start in terms of point scoring. And then everyone else who's on the McLaren Williams or McLaren Has, McLaren V-Carb, those kind of budget building team builds, there a lot of people, myself included, who sat on one of those builds, is looking to move into this McLaren Mercedes Piastri build. And I have to say, it's kind of obvious, and I think that's why so many people are talking about it, because it's clear, right? It's clear. I will be talking more in depth when I bring up my team in a couple of minutes, but to me, it's looking pretty clear. There is still some talk about trying to maintain that budget building potential for maybe a couple more races. Maybe we can stick it out and gain those extra few points of budget going into Miami, where people were looking to limitless. So, you can basically sacrifice some more points for the next 2 races and you go limitless, so you get even more budget through Miami, but also get the points through limitless basically, and you're going to get a big budget. That's kind of what some people are thinking, but my thinking is kind of away from that at the moment, and I'm thinking that McLaren Mercedes Piastri is kind of the new template, or at least it will be very much the new template very soon. And for me, I'm almost certainly going down that route, and I think there's a clear reason why I'm going down that road, and I'll explain it in a minute. Partly, I guess, is kind of my headline number 2 here, is that there is a new way of playing this year in 2025. Previous years, I mean, to some extent, not quite, maybe not so much last year. There was more of a budget building element, but then I feel like last year there was still more of a focus on scoring actual points. And I know that everyone's gone mad for budget and everyone seems to have forgotten about points, but no, we haven't truly forgotten about points. We're thinking more long term down the road, and we're thinking our budget's going to help us get those points down the line, and that is, very likely to happen. But I think some people have gone a bit crazy with the budget building, looking to extend it. And I personally, I don't think I am going to be extending the budget building to an extreme extent with like the B tier constructors, is what I'm trying to get at. I think moving to this template of McLaren, Piastri, Mercedes is kind of the way forward. But the new way of playing 2025 is focusing a lot on this budget, particularly the B tier drivers. Focusing on these budget drivers that are going to get us these gains, and avoiding those guys that get the losses, because we know what the algorithm is for the pricing. F1 Fantasy Tools has got a great tab on their website which just explains everything, We know every race, who's likely to gain money, who's not. It's just there. We don't have to do any calculations ourselves. We don't have to work anything out. We just go to F1 Fantasy Tools, look at their website, click on the budget builder, and like, oh, okay, so Ocon and Behrman and Hajar are doing they are like the obvious picks, right? Because they're going to gain money. So the new way of playing is kind of just looking at who's going to build that budget, and at a certain point, we will, I imagine, a certain point down the line, our teams will have evolved and got enough budget that we'll worry less about the budget gain and look more towards the points. And yeah, like I said, I will be discussing this more in a minute when I bring up my teams, but it's kind of interesting that there's this new way of playing. And I think it's advantageous for all of us engaged managers because we're going to jump ahead at least in budget, ahead of the less engaged managers for sure. There'll be a bunch of people out there that are just still blissfully unaware that their driver that just scored 10 points is still taking a 0.6. And my guy that scored 2 points, looking at you, Lance Stroll, went up 0.6 million. Now, it doesn't make sense to anyone that's not like fully engaged with the game. So we're definitely an advantage in that respect. If you're here right now watching this video, you are an engaged manager. So you're ahead of the vast majority of people. And I think it will pay dividends down the line. But yeah, this kind of new way of playing is interesting, but I'm not sure it's great for the game personally. But anyway, that's another story. Let's move on to the next headline. Clean air qualifying. It's just a kind of an observation, really, I guess, and a little bit of chat about it over on Twitter. That, I mean, we know clean air is obviously like a great thing for cars. All cars would like to drive in clean air because it stops them from sliding around a lot and ruining their tires. But we're seeing it even more this year. I think it's been exaggerated even more because of Suzuka, which was a bit of a snooze cruise, to be honest, where it's not a track that's great for overtaking in the first place, and you combine that with the tyres that just weren't really degrading at all. People were just like going flat out the entire time. There was just very little overtaken, and that just makes me think that similar tracks where there's overtaken is not very easy, we're going to see more of the people qualifying and finishing around their qualifying position. We're going to see it might be harder in that case for guys at the back, the budget guys, to actually get those overtakes and get those positions gained. And it might be better for people like your Charles Leclercs, your George Russells, etc. And obviously, as we saw in Japan, your Max Verstappens. People that are good at qualifying, they can just kind of hold position. Like the RB21 is arguably not as fast as the McLaren, but Verstappen was out in front. He qualified. He did an amazing lap on the Saturday, and he stayed there. The McLaren just couldn't. Strategy aside, I'm not going down that road of that debate whether they were right or wrong about strategy, etc. But regardless, Verstappen stayed ahead. He stayed ahead on turn one and stayed ahead for the entire race. Similarly, like people like George Russell, he's a good qualifier, so he's definitely like on the radar, and also bumps up the appeal of the Mercedes constructor. It's just kind of interesting that, in previous years, we were like looking much more at maybe drivers that wouldn't qualify so well and then move forward. Lewis Hamilton, particularly guilty of it last year, wasn't particularly great at qualifying, but had that good race pace to move forward. But if drivers qualify out of position now, I feel like it's not necessarily even a good thing, because the grid is so tight that even if you're in a better car, like a Mercedes or a McLaren even, I don't know how easy it is actually for those cars to necessarily go through the field. I mean, if they start like way at the back, they're definitely going to clear half the grid, right? But if you get like a Norris that messes up in Q3 and qualifies P9, I genuinely think, unless it's a high overtake track, that they might just struggle to get towards the podium. They might just struggle because it's so competitive. And like I say, this clean air thing is kind of important. So it's kind of just an interesting kind of observation, I suppose. But the last couple of bits, 4.5 being the magic number, because we now know with certainty that is the minimum price in F1 Fantasy. So it's quite useful for building our teams. We've got Bortoleto and Hajar now sat on 4.5. Great time to bring those boys in. Bortoleto maybe less so, because he's going to be a bit harder to gain that value that we want. But he is also just super safe. He can DNF for the rest of the season. I know that's going to be minus 20s for life, but he won't lose any more value, which is great. Really great, especially if you're pushed on budget. We can just sit on Bortoleto if we really need to. And then finally, Verstappen, I guess this kind of links into the whole clean air qualifying thing, but Verstappen's just very good, isn't he? He's very good, as he proved yet again in Suzuka. As a fantasy asset, is he turning some of our heads? Probably not as much as he would if this template wasn't forming. I think we're still kind of set on this McLaren Williams or McLaren Haas build. I think Verstappen would suddenly start becoming a bit more interesting, but because this template is kind of forming, people are going to be moving away from Norris. It's one of the reasons I didn't go for Norris anyway, and I just think Piastri is just massively underpriced and just, clearly basically on par with Norris. I don't know why anyone would go for Norris. I'm not criticising you if you're a Norris owner, but for my personal opinion, it was just I'm not going there because, first of all, I think Piastri is just about level with him, and second of all, if I want to get to this template, I'm just going to end up having to get rid of Norris to get back to the Piastri McLaren Mercedes build. So yeah, the whole Norris thing just makes it a bit awkward, which is why I haven't gone for him. And it's a similar sort of story for Verstappen. He's an awkward price, and as this template is forming, I'm not really going to go there. So let's have a look at the track itself and think about how this might impact our team selection. Although, to be fair, looking at the template is not going to affect our team selection a great deal. You never know, practice sessions do often throw up some surprises, but we'll look through it anyway. It is our first night race of the season, abrasive surface with multiple straights, and that will lead to some more overtaken, right? Enter Star Wars meme here with Padme and Anakin, right? More overtaken, right? Yeah, I think there will be more overtaken in Bahrain because of the extra straights and the heavier braking zones. However, looking at the overtakes in the last 3 years, it's actually very similar. Off the top of my head, I do believe Japan was 14th overtakes over the previous 3 years, looking at this generation of cars. And Bahrain's relatively surprisingly is just 12th overtakes in the last 3 years. Did surprise me, but yeah. Okay, it's okay for overtakes, and I imagine it will be better than Suzuka. But yeah, nevertheless, still not spectacular, as you might imagine, with lots of straights to overtake on. At least we've got some extra DRS zones, so maybe there'll be some more overtaken. Let's pray. In terms of safety, it's a very safe track, so there has been some questions posed to me over on Twitter and that, asking if I should use this chip or that chip. But personally, I'm not going to be using any chips unless something dramatic happens. But yeah, like things like no negative absolutely just doesn't seem necessary. Literally no DNFs here last year, 3 the previous year, and just 1 the year before that. And the safety car has only turned up, or VSC only turned up in fewer than half the races in Bahrain's history. So very safe track, nice sunny weather. It is going to be a night race, so it will be a bit cooler than the daytime temperatures of like 33, 34 degrees. So it's only going to be about 20, 26, 27 degrees come the race. So lots of speculation. Or will Mercedes be okay in that heat? It's like, yeah, they'll be fine. I think they'll be fine. I think Mercedes has definitely kind of improved their window. Looks like a much more balanced car this season that isn't going to be quite so affected by the climate, but we'll see. Obviously, we'll see. This will be a good test, but I do still have some strong faith in the Mercedes coming this week, which is why I'm looking to bring them into my team. Speaking of my team, here we go. So I just wanted to, before I get into the actual picking of the team as such, I just wanted to have a quick look at my season so far across my 3 teams, specifically my team 2. So let's have a look. If we go back to Australia, my team 1, you can see it had an absolute shocker. The violin came out and everything, but I went with this Ferrari Mercedes build, had the triple DNF. Boohoo, okay? Didn't do well, 73 points. My team 2, where a lot of other people perhaps would have gone for, started with the McLaren Mercedes George Russell build. Also caught a couple of DNFs, but because I already had this kind of set up, the McLaren Mercedes Russell, I was able to get that jump up to Piastri for the next race in China. So I went straight to this build. I just sucked up the loss of Bortoleto and Hadjar. I was like, let's just go for it. Not many people are going to afford this Piastri McLaren Mercedes build for at least a few more races, so let's just go for it. And again, scored some healthy points, 300, and kind of carried that over. Just adjusted my budget driver where I could to get a bit more of a price game, and scored 186 points. So this team, which is kind of looking, this is basically the new template, this spine of Piastri, McLaren and Mercedes. This is what this team's had all along so far, and I think there'll be some people that have been sat here on a similar team, or if not the exact same team, throughout the season that are just kind of feeling pretty smug about themselves. To be honest, I kind of wish actually in a way that this team 2 was my team 1, because it's only 2.2 million lower in budget, but it's about almost 200 points better off than my team one. It's like, yeah, I wildcarded in China on my team one and rescued the budget situation. And had a respectable week in Japan, as you can see here. We were back in the Williams and Hazes, etc. Got price rises from everyone. Great. I'm at 104.1, I think, million, which is fine. It's nothing spectacular, but it's fine. Probably about average from the engaged manager at this stage. But it's only 2.2 million above this team that started the season with this double DNF situation. But it's literally 200 points, and my team 2 is now at 5k global. My team 1 is only 250,000 or whatever it is, like a quarter of a million, which I know you can make big jumps early on the season, so it's not too dramatic, doesn't it? I'm not crying about that, but my point is that this team, which has been sat on this kind of template with Piastri, McLaren, Mercedes kind of spine throughout the season so far, is just every week just gaining. You look at I know it's a bit exaggerated because I had an extra DNF here. My 2 times flopped in Australia, but an extra 100 points, 100 plus points in race week 1, 30 odd points extra race week 2, 40 points extra race week 3. So what I'm trying to say is, it's all fine and mighty building our budgets and sitting on these cheaper constructors like the Williams in my case, or a lot of people went Haas and that sort of thing. It's all very well. You get your 0.6 most likely near enough guaranteed for likes of Haas and VCarb going into Bahrain. But look how many points we're actually leaking. I think it's important not to lose sight of how many points we are leaking early on. And I think playing the long game and everything, I think maybe I'm, a bit panicky and I shouldn't worry too much. We'll make it up further down the season. But the truth is, this team, which is sat here, my team 2, it's getting like 30, 40 points consistently more every week. And it's only 2.1 million down on budget, only 2.1. Like 2.1 isn't, you can make that up in a week. Have a good week and you can just make that up. Your budget drivers, these guys, Behrman, Stroll, Ocon, Hulkenberg, these people that if you pick them right based on F1 Fantasy Tools, you look at this and pick the best drivers, you can make up a couple of million every week quite easily. So the fact that my team and other teams around it, the top 10k currently, most of them will look like, haven't even used a chip. This team hasn't even used a chip, and it's 5k global. There's a bunch of people that have used chips, and this team is probably ahead of them. And it just goes to show how strong this Piastri, McLaren, Mercedes build is, in my opinion. And the fact that Bortoleto and Hadjar now hit rock bottom on this team also means that they can't go any lower. I can just swap out Hulkenberg to Doohan and start trying to gain price. And this team is just going to keep racing away. And that's not just my team too. That's a whole bunch of other people that have just had this team from the get-go. And we're just losing 40 points, losing 30 points, losing 50 points. And they're gonna be not that far behind in budget. So I think it's important to get onto this template. Let's just hop onto my actual team for the race weekend. It's important to get onto this template as soon as possible, in my opinion. Ignore my team 3. It's not working out. It's not working out on team 3. But yeah, my team 2 is doing well. And it's quite obvious that if you've got this team structure that's going here, we can just switch out Hulkenberg, move on to Mr. Doohan. Got loads of money in the bank. That's fine. I'm just sat on this template. Just gonna gain money. In fact, I can even get rid of Bortoleto, but I can't actually get anyone. So yeah, it's just safe to sit on Bortoleto because Fernando Alonso is going to lose more money. So yeah, I'm just gonna sit on this team. Hadjar's probably going to gain price. Bortoleto, unlikely to gain price, but it's not going down. So yeah, I think the teams like my team do here are just going to keep running away, and their budget isn't even that bad. So that makes me really, I don't know, maybe people think I'm overreacting. People think I'm like getting a bit jittery and I should focus more. Like I say, there'll be people that are still sat on like teams like this, like Haas, Williams, or more optimally looking at the F1 Fantasy Tools budget building thing. Like these are probably the 2 constructors that you want. You're going to guarantee yourself that 0.6 million. So, but they're getting like 10, 15, 20 points maybe on a good weekend. I know the sprint week, ignore the sprint weekend, it's kind of an outlier. But Japan, RBs did okay, got 14 points. Haas, they did okay, 10 points. Like, the points are just not really there. And you compare that to the likes of Mercedes, who are just getting 50, 60 points every race. We're bleeding a lot of points. And if we keep going for another couple of weeks, we're going to be another 100 points down, 150 points down. I mean, it concerns me. It concerns me. Also, the fact that this budget building shenanigans is great and all, but these B tier constructors, they get you 0.6, barring any disaster. I do think that they're also more likely to DNF just because they're more in the pack, in the meat grinder. They're more likely to DNF. They're also slightly less reliable than these bigger constructors in terms of reliability. So they're, for example, Alonso the other week having his brakes catch fire. And so they're just more susceptible to just randomly not getting that 0.6 and crashing out. I mean, I know the Ferraris as the A tier a bit of an outlier in China because they got DQ, but I don't think that's going to happen very often. So I think that the Mercedes and McLarens are just going to continue to just 0.3 every week, 0.3, 0.3, 0.3. You don't even have to worry about it. 0.3, 0.3, 0.3. Don't worry about it. Get the points. Get your 0.3 for each of them. Rather than sitting on 10, 15, 20 points is a great week. Yeah, 20 points. I just think that it's time. For me personally, your opinion might differ, but I guess you're watching this video for my personal opinion. That's because I'm the only one talking right here. So if you want to know my opinion, get on McLaren, get on Mercedes. I think that's just where my brain is at right now. So let's bring them in over here. We need to make some adjustments. We get rid of all these guys. We bring in all the guys that are down the bottom. Hajar and Doohan for me. Like I say, Bortoleto is a nice option. I have given some thought to Doohan versus Bortoleto. Bortoleto is that great safety net. He can't drop any more in value. But we're not just here to mitigate budget loss. We're here to try and get budget gain as well. And again, if we flick it back to F1 Fantasy Tool, Doohan only needs 3 points. Come on. 3 points, and I think he's done all right. If we look at the statistics, if it loads, we can go over here. Let's have a look at overtakes. We put sprint overtakes, race overtakes. That should bring that up. So let's have a look. So Doohan obviously didn't get any overtakes in Australia because he crashed straight out, but then he got 10 overtakes, which is actually joint highest in China. Pretty impressive. Japan also got a couple of overtakes in there as well on a really low overtake weekend. So that gives me some confidence that, these guys only score points basically through overtakes and positions gained. That's pretty much the only way they can score points. So the fact that Doohan has shown some initial signs that he's capable of doing some decent overtaking is promising. And let's have a quick look at positions gained as well. So sprint positions gained and race positions gained. Again, let's ignore Australia because he didn't get involved in that. So where is he here? Doohan with just 1 positions gained. That's still good that he's maintained his position, he hasn't dropped. We don't want him losing points. That's great. And then in Japan as well, 4 is actually the best. So yeah, Doohan showing it's very, very small sample size. Very small sample size. I accept that, but it's all we got to work with for Doohan at the moment. It's looking reasonably good, I would say. Particularly looking at the budget builder when he only needs 3 points to get that lovely 0.6 rise, whereas Bortoleto needs 12. So yes, Bortoleto is a safer option because he can't drop. Doohan could drop, but I think I'm going to go for drop Doohan because it's just that much more price gain potential, as well as if I go with this team, Doohan does have a DNF or whatever and he drops 0.6 and Bortoleto has a great race and he goes up 0.6, because I got 0.6 in the bank, I'm safe basically because I can hop off Doohan. He would go down to 4.8. Bortoleto would go up to 5.1, and I'd be fine basically. I'd have 5.4 in the bank at that point, and I could bring in Bortoleto if he had a good race. So yeah, I've got like an exit clause if Doohan doesn't work out. I'm quite happy with that. And if Hajar doesn't work out, again, not fast because he's at the bottom. He's at the 4.5 floor of budget, so it doesn't concern me. So I would say with a pretty high, I mean, it's only Monday evening. It's Monday evening right now. Still got the whole week ahead of us. Lots of news to come out. Talk of upgrades, Ferrari bringing upgrades. The track might suit Ferrari, blah, blah, blah. But, and you got practice sessions for random surprises and stuff. All sorts of stuff will happen and maybe we'll change our minds. But right now, I don't see it. I just don't see myself changing my mind. I've talked about this being a new template. I think it's just the right thing to do. It's boring. I admit it's boring. a lot of us, if not all of us, are going to be basically looking at the same team. It makes me think back to triple Aston Martin, triple Red Bull, and Zhou Guan Yu from a couple of years ago. It's not quite that extreme, because at least we've got this exciting, fun budget building game where we just have to hop on to whichever F1 Fancy Tools tells us to hop on to, basically. F1 Fancy Tools could really screw the community if they just put some random numbers in here and be like, oh, randomly, like Albon only needs like 2 points, and everyone goes on Albon. But I'm sure people do their own maths, and because they'd be confused by that. But it'd be quite funny to see the whole F1 Fancy community just dissolve because F1 Fancy Tools decided to have a bit of a laugh. But anyway, my thinking, my feeling is, don't wait around. I mean, I'm very happy that I can get here in 3 moves, and I've got 3 transfers to get there. Part of the reason why I kind of, like I say, if I just go back, it's part of the reason why I trusted Williams. I mean, I was very tempted to go for Haas. I was also strongly considering Racing Bulls. Just didn't see quite enough from either of them to suggest that they might actually score like as many points as Williams. I thought Williams had slightly more points scoring potential, which they actually ultimately ended up doing just about. 19 points in Japan is perfectly reasonable. They managed to get a couple of overtakes, which was quite nice. So yeah, that's kind of the reason why I left him in there, because I really want to save that transfer, thinking that this template opportunity would come up, and it has, because everyone did their jobs. Even there he is, Lance Stroll. I'm pretty sure he only needed 1 point to get that gain. He scraped over it with a terrible race. Qualified P20, finishes P20, gets lapped. Just terrible from Stroll. But he gets a 0.6, and then it's bye, out the team, off you go. Same for Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg also going to struggle. You know, he's like almost certainly going to get a drop, right? Almost certainly, looking at this, he's almost certainly going to get a drop. So Hulkenberg's out, Stroll's out. Constructors, we bring in Mercedes. If you've got like a massive budget, maybe there's some argument to bringing in Ferrari with the whole upgrade, bringing in a new floor and that. Maybe they'll be all right. But I just don't trust them. You know, if they're bringing a new floor, are they going to have it high enough off the ground to avoid another DQ? That would just be kind of funny if they did. I'm not going there. Mercedes have looked very strong, very consistent. I've been very impressed with Antonelli in his first few F1 races. George Russell's continued his really good form from last season. He's great at qualifying. I've already talked about how great qualifying, how strong qualifiers are going to be kind of rewarded in this kind of lack of overtaking situation we have at the moment, and the difficulty following and actually getting to overtake. So yeah, more than happy to bring in the Mercedes here. And then, like I said, my 10.5 million. Just drop off the Stroll and Hulkenberg choo-choo train and jump on board the Doohan and Hadjar train. I think it's so simple. It is so simple this week. I'm not going to think much more about it until the Friday practice sessions, to be completely honest. Like, this is where I'm at. And I would say as well, I know I've set myself up nicely for 3 free transfers to get to this team. Even if you don't have 3 free transfers, I would be seriously considering taking -10. I think I probably would comfortably take a -10 for this. -20, I'd pause to think a bit more. I think it still might be worth it. Because the -20 is going to kind of be negated most likely by Mercedes, as long as they don't do random DNFing or DQing, which is certainly possible. They're going to score a nice 50-60 points, most likely 50-60 points. Whereas if you stick with a Racing Ball or a Haas or whatever, you're going to get your 10-15 points. And yeah, the 20 points is probably just worth it to make that jump up to Mercedes, to be honest. So if you really don't want to take -20, you've got a wild card in your pocket. Maybe you want to use the wild card, but I don't know. It's. I think this is template for a reason, because it's very strong at this stage of the season. This may very well change with all the new directives coming out in Barcelona, a bunch of new upgrades likely to come out over the next few races, potentially again around Barcelona, which I'm going to. Can't wait to get out to Spain. Really looking forward to that. Just randomly throw that in there. Just very excited because it's only next month. But yeah, I do think that maybe there's some potential for a shake-up in the order. But up until that point, I just don't see myself moving away from this. I think my plan is just sit on Piastri, sit on McLaren, sit on Mercedes, juggle these B tiers as best I can to get in that budget. I feel like there might be a situation actually where we got this luxury of 4 B tier drivers that are relatively easy. Ocon, a bit of a stretch, but I think it's very much in the realms of possibility for the maximum price rise, at very least 0.2 rise. We're in a nice little situation where we've got 4 drivers that are going to get that rise, basically. I feel like maybe in a race or two, if a couple more people have kind of rubbish races, we might be in a situation where there's literally only 2 people or something that can get that rise, and everyone else needs like 10 or more, and it's just like a massive headache, and we're just kind of locked into losing budget, in which case maybe we then have to jump off the McLaren Mercedes template, jump onto a couple of really cheap B tier driver constructors that will get us 0.6 gains, so we can then get rid of all the budget losers that are going to lose 0.6, jump onto the likes of Antonelli or Russell or something to try and claw a 0.3, like where there could be some mad budget shenanigans coming up if we get that situation where there's not a comfortable and obvious kind of set of B tier drivers that we've got at the moment. So that'll be interesting if that comes up, to see how people react. But for the time being, this is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is it. In my opinion, this is the team for Bahrain.